Welcome to our Off the Beaten Track Frenchly event with the Alliance Française de Pasadena. We're going to talk about several places in France, flying to Paris, Lyon, going down to Collioure on the coast, the Mediterranean coast near Spain, the Lascaux Caves, the Dordogne and Provence. And we're going to give suggestions and answer questions and have a great time talking and meeting you all today. Before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Slater from the Alliance Française de Pasadena to welcome you and tell you a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Caitlin, and welcome everyone to this great partnership between Frenchly and Alliance Française de Pasadena. As Caitlin mentioned, I'm Dan Slater, president of the board of directors of Alliance Française de Pasadena. We're a nonprofit chapter of the worldwide Alliance Française network. And we're one of the most active chapters in the US. We offer French language instruction in person and online for beginners, intermediates, and the most advanced. So if you're a pure beginner or advanced and looking for French language instruction, you can check us out at our website, afdepasadena.org, and I'll put that in the chat in a few minutes. We're also a cultural center, and we have many programs like this one. And so if you're interested, please, again, check out our website for the upcoming cultural events, some in person, some online, and some are hybrid. So if you're near or far, you can join us for that. I also wanted to invite you to become a member, and you can check that out on our website. We have various membership categories. And lastly, we're in the midst of our fundraising drive. And if you're like this program and want to help out, we can certainly use your assistance, and you can go to our website and click Join Us and find the appropriate link. We're greatly pleased to be partnering today with Frenchly for this event, and encourage all of you, if you have not done so already, to please go to the Frenchly website, which is frenchly.us, and subscribe to their emails to receive their terrific blogs and newsletters, including Caitlin's terrific Friday blog, Le Weekend, which is always engaging, thoughtful, and informative. And I encourage you to check out all that Frenchly.us has to offer on their website, their blogs, their webinars. It's all terrific, and we're greatly appreciative of Frenchly.us in working with Alliance Française Pasadena on today's event. So I'll turn it back to you, Caitlin, to kick it off, and thank you all for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan. I'm so glad that we got in touch and you had this idea and we've pulled it together and pulled all these great people together. To start, sorry about the little hiccup at the beginning, everybody. just a Luddite from Maine here. So here we have the brunette here with the shortish hair is Kat Rickman. The other brunette with glasses and the pink wall behind her is Karen Karbo. Then we have Philip here, Philip Ruskin, who's got a blue sweater on and glasses and some sort of mantle behind him. And Keith Van Sickle here with some awards hanging behind him. So we are all going to talk about our time in France and places we like to go and enjoy, and unusual places you might not find in guidebooks, but that do actually exist, and might be an enjoyable little side trip for you, a walk down a beautiful street, great place to get ice cream or to get some bearable coffee or a gluten-free baguette. So we're going to try to give you ideas for when you're planning your next trip. And in preparation, I've also got the links, which I'm going to put in the could put in the chat here of all the Le Weekends I wrote back in August after we came back from France. I wrote one about Lyon, one about Collioure, one about Annecy and sort of the Alpine region of France, and one about the Dordogne and the Lascaux caves. So I will put those up now. But first, while I'm doing that, I'm going to turn it over to Philip and Catherine, who are going to talk for a few minutes about Paris and places to go in Paris. Before you start, I want to tell you both, everything you say must be true. And I say this because one time my brother was visiting me when I was living in France many years ago, and we were all excited. He had brought the Let's Go guidebook, which was made by Harvard students. And my brother went to Harvard. So of course, this was going to be a great guidebook for us to use. And we walked for it was freezing, it was January. And we walked forever to go to the Picasso Museum. And we had read about in Let's Go this amazing lunch spot right next to it that where we could get this incredible 8-course prefix meal, and we were going to be treated to great table wine and all these desserts and everything. Anyway, we were starving, totally hypoglycemic by the time we got there, and freezing, and no such place existed. If you've ever been a victim of such a ruse from a bunch of Harvard students, that will not happen today. We will tell you real places to go, right, Kat and Philip? You will not walk in the freezing cold to a restaurant that does not exist. Que n'existe pas. I'm going to turn it over to you two.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. And well, I would say then the first thing that I would recommend when traveling in France is always make a reservation. That way you know that the restaurant exists. So I lived for a while, quite a while ago, in the 11th arrondissement in Paris on Rue Oberkampf. And one of my first recommendations is, especially for young people, it's a really, really great neighborhood to stay in. Up around the 11th, you've got Belleville, you've got Rue Oberkampf. It's much younger, it's much hipper. You've got a lot of gluten-free crepe places and amazing Vietnamese food up by Ménilmontant. Lots of great places to go out. There's a lot of small independent music places l'International, l'Alimentation Générale. You can go out at Nouveau Casino is a great place for techno. A really, really wonderful rooftop bar is a place called Le Perchoir. And you've got a great comedy spot, Le Paname, which has also a lot of comedy in English. So those are just a few places to start off. And Philip, why don't you take us to a very different part of the city?
Thank you. Also to Kat's point about always check. I would second that. Always, before you go anywhere, don't trust Google. Don't trust whatever the place is, their website, because a lot of times they're wrong. I've gone to places, I'm sure all of you have been to France, you go to a store and there's a sign that says, exceptionnellement, back in 15 minutes, right? And then an hour later, it's still there, the sign's still there. We went to a place, right, which we were really looking forward to, we saw on Google, and we get there and it's not there. And we asked the people at the address, the actual number address, and they go, oh no, that hasn't been here for 2 years. So Kat's advice, I think, is paramount.
Except that when you're trying to go off the beaten path and find somewhere unusual, you may stumble into these moments. And these are kind of happy discoveries, good stories for later, and you'll find something else. We ended up having a great lunch at a falafel place in the Marais. So, desperation can lead you other interesting places.
So absolutely, I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes one door is shut, another door opens up. And the other thing I would say is because I bike around my neighborhood, so my neighborhood's it's sort of quite different from Kat's, but I think they're balance out a trip because it's a bit more, it's residential, right? So there aren't many tourists at all. So you go to restaurants, you won't hear much English spoken. And so rather than being for places that are active, hip, it's more about history. It's really taking a walk back in time. So I'm in the 17th arrondissement, which borders on the 8th arrondissement. So, for example, I was biking to the Bois de Boulogne, which is just 10 minutes away from here. So it's a place that I recommend if the weather allows. Rent a bike, right? Near Porte de Maillot, you get off either the number 1, the 10, or the RERC, and you can rent a bike and go to the Bois de Boulogne. It's the second largest park in France, was built by Napoleon III. And so I happened upon this castle, right? There's this chateau in the middle of the forest. And it turns out I'm talking to people. I met the man who created it. His name is Jan Arthus Bertrand. Now, he became world famous as the photographer and author of this book called Earth from Above. You may have seen it. It's like these amazing photographs he takes of landscapes from a hot air balloon when he was living in Africa. And he became a filmmaker, and then became an environmental activist, and he got enough funding to create this foundation. And so this castle, got all these happening. You've got films, you've got video, you've got this one room, this entire floor that's all world instruments, right? Instruments from all over the world. And there's somebody there, full-time musician, who plays them, teaches you, right? Shows you can actually play these things. And then outside, often they have markets. And then from time to time, yeah, again, you have to check. I would suggest call it. Their website, I have to say, is quite faithful, right? Is actually I think, trustworthy. They have festivals. They have an organic food festival for a few weeks. They have classes, demos, outdoor concert area with this amazing
that sounds
stage.
really fun. Yeah, and a beautiful location, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's outdoors. It's in the park, and it's the outdoor music festival is on the estate. So it's a great place to have a picnic. And I'll leave you with
the Jan Arthus
Bertrand.
His book Earth from Above is a terrific gift as well, a terrific holiday gift. I unfortunately gave my copy to a friend as a gift when she was over for dinner. But it's a wonderful book, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I just put here the link to Philip's piece about him and about meeting him in the chat. And I want to take a moment also to tell you all that we are going to do questions afterwards. This is being live streamed, for better or for worse, on YouTube. So you will be able to go back and watch it and find some of the places. And I'm going to do one more thing for you, is I'm going to make a document tomorrow with some of the places and some of the little write-ups that we've done and ideas that we've had about the places we're going to share about. And I'm going to put them in a link for anybody who wants to see them on the Frenchly website. So you'll get that in my Le Weekend tomorrow if you're a subscriber. Let's go to Catherine with one more Paris idea, and then back to you, Philip. And then maybe we go on to Lyon and then circle back around. We will do questions. If I didn't say this already, people can ask questions in the chat, and we'll reserve some time at the very end for you to ask, more questions.
Sure. So I'll just give a couple more really cool places that are like a little bit farther out than the 11th. Actually, one might be in the 11th. But on the Canal Saint-Martin, you've got Le Comptoir Général, which is a really interesting space. It kind of looks like an old Hollywood set from like you walk in and you feel like you're in a movie. You're like, I am in Indiana Jones's like Africa or the Caribbean or somewhere. It's a rum bar, it's a music venue. They've got markets there. They've got all kinds of really interesting things. Then if you keep going up the canal and end up at the Canal de l'Ourcq, there's a really cool spot called Le Pavillon des Canaux, which is sort of like an old mansion that's also been converted into this sort of multidisciplinary space. So you go in and you can go upstairs and you're like in these fully furnished rooms, and they have DJ parties and there's a restaurant and they do all these cool classes and events. But so those are a couple more places to entertain yourself when you're out and about.
That's cool. I will make sure I put those links in a document tomorrow for those of you who want to see them. Philip, can you give us another off the beaten path kind of place to go and see in Paris?
So, well, in that same neighborhood, there's a mansion called Nissim de Camondo, and it's a mansion from the 1800s. which has been perfectly preserved. So it's like stepping into literally a home, right, of a wealthy Parisian, the kitchen, the bedrooms, the dining room, all that stuff. And what's cool is there's two of everything, because the man who owned it bought two of everything when he traveled the world in case one broke. And there's a restaurant next door, right, off the Eaton path, call it, called Le Commando, which was their stables, right, of the family. Now it's this beautiful outdoor restaurant. It's perfect for a brunch, and you won't hear, when I went there a couple of times, I never have heard English spoken. So it's still off the Eaton path.
So that's in your piece, Philip, that you wrote for me of 8 remarkable and unusual outdoor museum cafes in Paris, right? Places to lunch. So I'm going to put that here for all of you as well. Catherine, you want to tell us one more Paris place?
Sure. Well, you know what? Since we're on the topic of museums, I always like to give a shout out to a couple of the sort of lesser known museums in Paris that are smaller places that are really amazing to go if you don't want to wait in line for several hours to get into the Louvre, for example. One is the Jeu de Paume, which is the photography museum, and the other is the Petit Palais, which is a Beaux-Arts museum, and it also has a really beautiful courtyard cafe that Philip has also written about. But yeah, those are some really great places to catch art if you've maybe already seen some of the bigger museums.
Yeah, great idea. I mean, I think I wrote about this in Le Weekend recently, but personally, I like to go in, see a little bit, go out, do something else, come back. So I like a longer time, in these smaller museums are a lot of fun to go to. That might be a great segue, Kat. Both you and I have spent time in Lyon at the Lumiere Museum, right?
Yes.
And that is a really exciting place. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So I went in April of this year. And so I had no idea about this before I went to Lyon, but it's considered by a lot of people to be the birthplace of cinema. The Lumiere brothers made a lot of really important technological advances in cinema. And so you go to this really beautiful old mansion that they used to live in that's now dedicated to their work. If you're a film buff, it's really, really cool, especially if you're into really technical things. They also have a room where you can look at these little 50-second videos that they made that are some of the earliest examples of cinema that we have. So that's definitely a very cool space, especially if you love film. And they also have I believe a film library and a cinema on the same campus.
Yeah, it's a really exceptional place. I loved it too. And you can look through all these little boxes. You can see early efforts at using light and moving image and the early Muybridge stuff. We learned so much there and just had an amazing time. And in fact, I went with Philip. My family and Philip came and joined us. So that is definitely, if you're in Lyon, which I highly recommend going to Lyon, that is somewhere you should definitely go. And it's a small little quiet museum on its own little quiet campus. It has a little cafe as well. And they're out on the street. There are lots of little places for sandwiches or drinks or croissants or anything, and some little shops as well. And it really does feel that you've entered sort of a whole new universe when you go down there to that area of Lyon. Another idea about Lyon, Kat.
Another idea about Lyon, well, I'd love to mention, because it's one of the larger cities, it is a great place to go out in at night. There's a lot of places for very different vibes. I've written about this in our 48 hours in Lyon. But one really beautiful old spot is called Look Bar. It's got a very old-timey, jazzy feel to it. It's one of the oldest bars in Lyon. And there's also these peniche bars that you go down by the river, and there's just bar after bar after bar on a boat. And they all have different kinds of music. So you can go on one. If you don't like the music, you can go on to the next one. You can hang out on the terrace. You can hang out on the boat. And if you go down into the bottom part of the boat, where the dance hall is, you can look through the portholes and see the river and see the buildings. And it's a really, really cool place for something a little bit off the beaten track, off the beaten way.
Chemin.
East, as we say, the piece.
You know, let me jump in and mention, although it's not posted on our website yet, we will be having an event about Lyon on February 24th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be taking a virtual tour of Lyon from someone from Lyon. One of our French language teachers is from Lyon and will be giving us her inside view of Lyon in that Zoom event on February 24th at 10:30. So you can watch our website, and as soon as that gets posted, sign up for that. It should be a great 1 hour tour of Lyon from someone who knows it intimately.
Yeah. Also in Lyon, one of the things we discovered, and Keith, you and I have talked a bit about this, but strangely, you know, it's hard to find a good cup of coffee in France, and I happen to be a coffee person, so that was particularly discouraging. But there is a great coffee shop in Lyon, and it's called, I'll show you a picture of the coffees that we got hooked on. Here's one. And it's, and I'll show you then a couple of pictures of the place actually as well. It's called Cafe Berlin. So that's, you know, maybe not very French sounding, but there are French people who serve you. And what they do is they take these, they make a really good espresso there, thank goodness. And they crush in their hands. And then here's a sort of inappropriate, which I didn't even realize it said that on it. Sorry. Wine bottle. Excuse me. What? Where did that come from? Who took that picture? What they do is they take mint and sugar, they crush the mint in their hands, and then they sort of mix it all frothy and shake it with ice and coffee and sugar. And that's the drink you saw. And it was like amazing. It was so good.
So it's a mojito espresso, mojito.
Yeah, it's a mojito espresso. It's the best coffee we had in France. And another place I might mention in Lyon was this great bakery, if you're gluten-free, called Les Gasteliers. And this is the kind of amazing stuff they make. Hopefully you can see that. That's back somewhere else. Sorry, this is not necessarily very fine-tuned, but here's a picture of their bread. So they make great bread there. And what else? We were at the Croissants neighborhood, which is a really old silk workers neighborhood. And one of our favorite restaurants, which I write about in one of those Le Weekends you have the link to, is called La Grand Café de la Soirerie. And it's, we had these amazing chicken, sort of a French take on a chicken Caesar salad. It had more of a mustard vinaigrette. We went back several nights in a row just to eat this. I think my then 7-year-old, now 8-year-old, ate more salad in every evening we ate there than he ate any other time in France. So that was awesome. And we also got terrific gluten-free baguette in Lyon at just the regular, organic store in the Croissants neighborhood as well. And one of our favorite places was we went swimming at the Tony Bertrand piscine, which was built for the Olympics, in an Olympic bid, and then never used. And that was really a great, unusual place, all French families, no tourists. And we were swimming in this crazy fun pool. And I wrote about that in one of these Le Weekends up here. So Catherine, one more Lyon tip, and then let's go to Provence.
Sure. So Lyon, obviously very big food city. I've written a lot about recommendations for places to eat that are probably a little bit more well-known. But if you're in the Vieux Lyon neighborhood, which is very touristy, there's a lot of tourist trap restaurants. A really nice space to go is the Food Traboul, which is, they have all of these different chefs come, and they do these sort of daily pre-fee lunch deals that are very, very cheap. Like you can get a lunch for 10 euros. That's, Lyon restaurant quality. So if you're in that neighborhood and you don't want to get caught in a tourist trap, that's a great place to go to get something to eat.
Also Les Halles, right?
Also Les Halles.
Yeah.
But I think Leal is a little bit more well known, but you can get
Yeah.
some really great lunch deals there as well.
But I mean, even there, like we bought, I mean, I think an entire bag of different cheeses, 7 or 8 different cheeses for something like 15 euros. So it was absurdly cheap for all this amazing cheese that we brought back actually to have lunch with you, Philip. And it was really, walking around, all the food was so fresh. We got some of the best lettuce for a salad that I've ever had at Leal that day. So definitely the best food comes through Leal for all the restaurants in Lyon, for sure. Okay, let's move on to Provence. Karen, how are you doing there? Do you have anything you'd like to add in the meantime?
No, I'm good. I'm waiting to hear about Provence since it's sort of around the corner from me.
Yeah, all right. So Keith, you kick us off. Maybe with coffee and gluten-free, since you and I are both gluten-free.
Well, I agree with you. Coffee is lousy in France, so you really have to hunt it down. For gluten-free, since you mentioned that, I have celiac disease, can't have anything with gluten. And one of the things in Provence is the world's best gluten-free restaurant. So La Berge de Fenière, which is just outside of Loumarin, is the only restaurant in the world which is 100% gluten-free and has a Michelin star. It's been around for a number of years. Ren Samut, the chef, was a starred chef for a number of years. And then it turns out her daughter, Nadia, has celiac disease. And so a few years ago, just before Nadia took over the restaurant, they converted their menu 100% to gluten-free. There's nothing with gluten at all, so there's no cross-contamination or anything. They kept the Michelin star because it was risky changing the menu like that. And it's just a fantastic place, whether you have celiac disease or not. The food is marvelous. It's expensive. It's a Michelin starred restaurant, but it's really a destination place. And we try to go there once a year for our anniversary because it's really nice. I live part of the year in Saint-Remy de Provence, which is between Avignon and Marseille. And so it's not too far away.
Speaking of food, you also suggested a picnic spot, right? That can you tell us a little more about that? It's great to go to the markets in the morning, right? And fill up your baskets. So when you travel to France, I suggest you pack 3 or 4 cotton bags to take with you for shopping. And, shopping at the markets in the morning is a great idea. We can get fruit, bread, cheese, some cooked meats even, and take them with you and eat outside or on a bench or in a picnic spot. Tell us about this picnic spot that you love.
Yes, so it's in the Luberon Valley, which is well known. That's what Peter Mayle wrote about when he wrote his Year in Provence. And there's a hilltop village called Bonnieux. So from the village, you can look down on the Luberon Valley. It's very beautiful. But if you go past Bonnieux up to a place called the Cedar Forest, and I can put a map link later, as you drive up, about 2 miles up, there's this little building on the side of the road that looks like an outhouse. I don't know what it is. It is not an outhouse. I've looked inside, but there's this little building. You park there, you walk through a little bit to the left, and you look way down on Bonnieux, which is a hilltop village, and you have probably the best view in Provence. You can see everything. There's trees. I've had picnics there on 100-degree days with a breeze, and it's cool and it's shady, and you just have a picnic in the middle of nowhere with the best view ever. I think you've got a picture of one of those picnics, Caitlin, if you want to show that. But it's just magnificent, and nobody's ever there because who would park by an outhouse and have a picnic? So I'll put the link below.
Caitlin, I think you're muted.
So there you go. You can see the valley below. There's my wife on the right, our 2 friends, and our dog, who's a little hard to see because she's black, but she's right below that bottle of wine.
That is quite a view.
Yeah.
But it's just, you can just see forever. You can see Mont Ventoux, you can see the whole Luberon Valley. You've got little patches of lavender in the right time of year. You've got vineyards, you've got olive groves. And it's just, it's one of those hidden picnic spots.
Did you say that's your dog, Keith?
Yes, that's my dog.
Does your dog travel back and forth from California to France every year?
She does. She does not like it, but she has a great life in France because she can go almost everywhere except food stores. She goes to restaurants with us. She goes into shops.
Right.
France is a great country for dogs. Yeah.
I'm sure it's a great country also for table scraps.
Well, yes, she's very popular too. You know, we often find we'll go to a restaurant and before they take our order, the server will bring the dog a bowl of water and ask if they can pet her. So it's very sweet. And she's very friendly. She loves it.
Kat, what do you have anything about Provence you'd like to share?
Sure. So I had a few recommendations, I guess somewhat near your neck of the woods. I had the opportunity to visit Arles for the first time earlier this year. And a lot of people go there for the Roman ruins. A lot of people go there because Vincent van Gogh lived there. And there's a very, very touristy cafe that he allegedly painted. It might not be the same cafe. We don't know. But if anyone is passing through, which they absolutely should do a day trip, there's a really amazing contemporary art museum called Luma, the Parc des Ateliers. And it's got this giant tower designed by Frank Gehry and all of these, like, I mean, you can see everything because there's nothing even remotely close that is as tall as it. It's filled with incredible exhibitions. There are all of these converted factories that are now art exhibitions. And there is going to be an exhibition coming up soon that will be presenting the highlights from the 34th Biennial de Sao Paulo, if anyone has the opportunity to go there soon.
And it's a great photography city.
Yeah.
It's a great
Definitely.
It really is great.
Yeah, it really is. And the other thing, we were just there actually.
Oh, great.
And I was surprised it's on the Rhone. Like if you just, you know, right on the side of it is this enormous river, which I was not expecting. And if you went down it, you would run into Marseille. So yeah, it's a very cool place. As they told me that it's pretty.
Yeah, we have tomorrow when I post like notes from this this event, I'll put, Catherine has a great piece from last spring, right, or last summer about Luma as well, that I could put up.
Yeah, that's from the spring from, because it's a new museum also.
Yeah, it's just beautiful from the pictures. Keith, do you want to give us another sort of off the beaten track, interesting thing to do in Provence?
Sure. So in the Luberon Valley, there's a place that's very well known. It's one of the highlights of Provence, Roussillon, which is where they used to mine ochre, which was used in getting color for paints before synthetic paints came out. And so they quarried it, which means they carved it out of the hillside, and it's abandoned now, but you can walk through these abandoned quarries. It's like walking through a rainbow because you've got cliffs and hillsides that are orange, red, purple, blue, and it's just beautiful. That's very well known, and I recommend it. You have to do that. Much less well known is about 10 minutes away is the ochre mines of Brux, which is where rather than carve it out of the hillside, they carved into the mountainside. And so what you have are these tunnels, which are 30 feet high, about 10 feet wide, and there are miles and miles of them underground, like 25 miles of these in a sort of labyrinth. And you can take a tour through. You don't go through all 25 miles, but you walk through. They're kind of orange, and they tell you how they did it, which is pretty interesting. And they tell you, which is kind of funny, back in the day, you had to mine where there was enough ochre to be profitable, but they didn't have the testing equipment we would have today that they could take. This was pre-electronics and everything else. So the way they did it was ochre has a taste. And if you have enough ochre, it has a strong enough taste. And they literally had specialized ochre tasters who went along with the miners to say, okay, follow this vein. This is profitable. Okay, stop. We've turned right here because it doesn't taste right. And it's just this really entertaining, really beautiful tour.
Did it kill them?
You can take through this underground labyrinth. What's that?
Did it kill them? The ochre? Did it?
No, it tastes like it's iron. It tastes like blood. So
No,
you just have to taste a little bit.
Talk about a refined French palate.
Yeah, it's all natural, Karen.
But if you spend your whole life eating it, it feels like it couldn't be good for you.
But they were very sensitive. It was like above 20% it was profitable. Below, so it's 19%. No, it's, as you say, Kat, very refined French palate.
Yeah. That seems like a nice moment to let's let's go to Karen. I feel like we are all type A personalities. We have so much that we want to tell you all. So maybe we can circle back around and spend a few minutes at the end throwing in extra things that we forgot to say. But let's hear a little bit about southwestern France and Collioure, where I visited you this past summer.
In July, yeah.
I'm going to put up some pictures while you talk, Catherine, of my time there. Okay. I mean, sorry, Karen.
I feel like my job is the easiest because you know we have lived in Collioure since 2019, and it's so off the beaten track that most French people don't even know that it exists. I mean, some do. If you know Collioure exists, you know it and love it. But a lot of people that when I travel throughout France and I say I live there, it doesn't even ring a bell. It is on the Mediterranean. The part of France, it's French Catalonia. There's a little nub of Catalonia that pokes up into France. It is part of 4 villages right before the Spanish border called the Côte Vermeille, the Vermilion Coast. And part of that is because in the summer, when the sun sets, the sea turns this kind of reddish, rosy pink. It's been here forever. The earliest settlement was here noted in 673. Roman generals used to come and retire here. This part of France is the far western edge of the Roman Empire. We are about 14 miles from the Spanish border as the crow flies. We're right on the Med and the Pyrenees, which run along the coast which run along the bottom of France between France and Spain, end here in Collioure. So we have no stoplights. We have 2,600 people. The whole place is off the beaten track, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
But we love it. It's perhaps most known for being the place where Fauvism, the art movement, was born. Matisse was kind of painting hotel motel art until the summer of 1905, when his wife Amélie, who was from Toulouse and was a big fan of the South, said to Henri that it was perhaps time to switch things up, brought him to Collioure, and his palette was revolutionized, as we know, and André Dran was down here, and Fauvism was born. And it's interesting because the light down here is so phenomenal. Sometimes I just think he really didn't have to use his imagination. He just looked out the window and painted what he saw. It's a great place for hikers, bikers, a huge biking community. In Girona, over the border in Spain, is a global biking center. And you can see why, like between the mountain paths and along the coast, it's quite amazing. Yesterday, we took our dogs to the stretch of beach just south of us that is completely wild. Like nothing is built on it. There are no structures. You turn around and you can see the Pyrenees. It's quite something because, you know, when I think of like France profonde, I always think of the middle of the country. And so the fact that this coast down here is pretty wild is quite extraordinary.
Yeah. It's a really beautiful place. It's when we were there at the sort of end of July, beginning of August, there were lots of French families, almost all French families vacationing there, really spending the time en famille, going out to restaurants together, noticeably not on their phones, talking with each other, laughing, walking, swimming. Also, if you go down, there's sort of a main beach there where you can swim right, and there are boats out in front, a sandy beach. But if you walk around that, Karen, what is that place on the right? And then you can walk around to the rocky beach.
Yeah, because there's 3 sort of little coves. La Ballette is that little cove that you walk around to. Yeah.
If you're at the sort of sandy beach, there's sort of a path that goes around, and there's a rocky beach, which reminded me a lot of my home state of Maine, actually. It's wavier, the water's a tiny bit colder, and it's all rocks, and it's, talk about off the beaten path. There was hardly anybody swimming there, just a few families. And
right.
it was a really fun place. And some people snorkel there looking for octopi, right? In the,
Yeah.
along the rocks.
Mhm.
And you know, people really love to swim at these places, and they were swimming across the little channel back and forth, you know, great groups of people. And that was really fun to be a part of, you know, exercising in the water with people.
The thing is, I love about living in France and love about living here is that like literally everybody is a beach body. Like you see people
Yeah.
on the beach, you know, all ages, all body
shapes.
types, all
Yeah.
shapes and sizes and whole families, and everyone's having a great time. And there's just this sort of sense of freedom. And you know, the French, I have to say, really know how to go on vacation. In fact, I'm still working here. Like, I am not retired. I am not independently wealthy. I am not on vacation. So it's kind of a challenge, right? Because when the French come here, for the most part, like there are only 2,500 people that live here. And so like when our neighbors come, like we are on vacation when they are on vacation, because nobody knows how to be on vacation like the French.
So
You know, we have
some suggestions I might have for going down to Collioure are, you know, we rented an Airbnb and it was great. We loved it. Having your own little apartment or space, I would say, might be preferable to a hotel down there. There are some great grocery stores, and so if you get an Airbnb with a kitchen, there's great markets and there's great grocery stores. One of my favorites that I'll put in the document tomorrow that I share with everybody is called either l'épicerie or the Magasin Bio, and it's on the Rue de la République. And it's a grocery store that's all organic, and they make their own. There's a gluten-free bread that they had there that was hard for me to believe was gluten-free. I'll show you guys a picture of it. But it was pretty amazing. And we got amazing cheese there and all kinds of great food. And that was really fun.
oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, we also went to this La Crêperie Bretonne, which was downtown, which was actually a wonderful place. If you are gluten-free, they make a sarrasin or buckwheat crepe that was delicious. And it's a great place to buy anchois, to buy anchovies and sardines to bring back, and tuna in beautiful little glass jars. There's some great, they're fished right out off the coast there. And then I'll send you guys a link to a terrific ice cream shop that we found that a local told us about that had this cactus sorbet, which I still dream about. We even had it one morning for breakfast. It was just that good. So
the other thing that's really interesting, and you were talking about, you know, the sort of information that's online or whatever, never being quite up to date. Like I know all the restaurants and stuff down here really rely on Facebook, and they have like Facebook pages that are much more up to date than their websites. So if you go, they kind of have a website and it'll say, you know, that they're open this month, but on Facebook, they will say, no, in fact, we're on vacation for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's much better, interestingly enough, for Americans to check their Facebook group for some restaurant or store or whatever, because they seem to at least down here, they update that before they update any website that they might have.
yeah. Also, one of the things that you mentioned, Karen, about Collioure that's so true is the colors. The light is just unbelievable in that corner of France, bordering France with bordering Spain with the Pyrenees. You can go over to Spain if you decide to spend a chunk of time in 15 minutes.
Spain, yeah. And it has this, like it's Catalonia. It has like the food is a little spicier down here. They cook with, you know, they have peppers and tapas a lot. So definitely, I mean, that's something that I think really was interesting to me about France. I obviously knew how different the regions were, but now that I live in the deep, deep South and you know, they have a different accent and, you know, in a way, some of their habits are almost more Spanish. So
Right.
It's just interesting how different that all the different regions can really be in a very sort of profound way.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should spend a few minutes now, just everybody sort of conversing and jumping in with ideas and thoughts. Keith, there was a place about either flying or gliding, right, that you mentioned in Provence. And I think that Philip, there are some more ideas from you, a glider airport, right?
Yeah, there's an aerodrome just outside of San Remo de Provence. It's right at the base of the Alpes mountains. It's like a gigantic grassy field where gliders take off and land. You can ride with a pilot and ride and glide over the Alpes. And it's kind of cool because they generally don't have the airplane towing the glider to get up in the air. What they have is this 1/4 mile long cable, which they attach to the front of the glider. It's like a big fishing reel, and all of a sudden they flip it and it yanks the plane, and in like 3 seconds it is airborne and shooting into the air, and it's just a wild thing to see. And it's a beautiful spot. It's the best view of the LP I know of because there's a big open area right in front of it, and it's also next to one of the best wineries in the area. So you drive or bike over there, watch the planes, maybe go for a ride. There's a hiking trail nearby. Go have some wine tasting. It's just a little known spot 2 miles outside of San Remo de Provence.
That's
Beautiful
cool.
spot.
Philip, I have a question or a thought for you, which I'm hoping would also, you might kick off some more sort of smaller museums. You've done a lot of museum and show writing for me, you know, and I love that work that you've done for me. Somebody wrote a question about, have you thought of visiting Marmottan Museum in Paris, a great place if you like Monet Impressionism. So can you,
It's a great one.
do you know this place? Can you tell us about it?
I do. I think Kat has written about it as well. Is it the Marmottan? Is it?
Yeah, the Marmottan.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Right. And that's also, I think, and Kat's written more about these mansion museums or like boutique museums, and that would probably be I would put that for me in the top 3 of all of them in Paris.
And isn't there a
wonderful.
Gustave Moreau that's in that big house that's the Moreau Museum in Paris is super cool?
I don't know that one. I know the Marmottan is certainly a good one. And I think we were talking before, Keith and Karen were talking about picnicking, talking about outdoors. And if you're in Paris, there's a lot of the place that I mentioned is great for picnic, the Bois de Boulogne. Also, Bois de Vincennes has a place called La Ferme de Paris, which is the farm of Paris, which is an urban farm where it has cows, sheep, paths, fields that they're cultivating, flower gardens, herb gardens. A great place to picnic. But if you're going to picnic in Paris, obviously there's no shortage, as you mentioned, of markets and halles. But there's a traiteur, right? The traiteur, is a caterer. It's one of these places where they have all the prepared salads, prepared foods, all those things that take hours and hours to cook, right? Things that you might find in a restaurant, but they're right there, right? To go, take it to go. And it's called Maison Pou, P-O-U. And I'll share the link to that. And it's probably one of the most renowned and jaw-dropping. I mean, if you're a foodie, you go into this place, literally, you look like the animated fox whose eyes come popping out of his head. It is literally eye-popping. It's got a place my wife has to literally drag me past. Like we have to like run past it. So it's a great place to get. It's like all of the things that you've seen in magazines, in restaurants, and specialty food stores in one store. It's been there, I think, since the 1800s. So that would be my pick it's not cheap, but you're in Paris and you're going out for a picnic, it's worth it.
You also mentioned a cool place to me about a walking tour, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that walking tour you were mentioning?
Yeah, so that's right. So it's also in my neighborhood, and it's a block called Rue Fortuny. Now, this neighborhood has the most mansions of any area in Paris from the 18th century and not early 19th century. And it was created by housemen. And this street, Fortuny, you can go to a museum called the Musée Jacques Henner, which is an impressionist who is not very well known, but his mansion was turned into a museum. And that's where you can go to get somebody, usually it's a Louvre architecture student, will take you on a tour. And you go down the block and you'll go past where Sandra Bernhardt lived. You'll go past where Edmond de Rostand wrote Cyrano de Bergerac. A few blocks away, there's a statue to Alexandre Dumas, right? The Three Musketeers. He lived in the neighborhood. A few blocks, you keep going a few blocks, and you're Boulevard Haussmann, where Proust lived. He lived in a few places. That was one. And a few blocks further is another place where Proust lived. Monet hung out there. And then a few blocks from there is the Parc Monceau, which is Monet used to go there, hang out and paint. And that also was created by, that park was also created under Napoleon III by Haussmann. Haussmann, as you know, the man who basically redesigned Paris to be the Paris that we all know today.
Yeah, Catherine, you wrote a great piece about that last spring or over the summer about the architecture of Paris and how it came to be. Keith or Karen, does either of you want to jump in with a tip or a place to go? Oh, Keith, we also haven't done caves, have we? How about just a couple of words about visiting the Dordogne caves?
Well, you know, southern France and Spain have a lot of prehistoric cave paintings. That's where a ton of them that go back as far as 35,000 years exist. And the French have done a magnificent job 3 times now, because it's hard to go into these caves. They're very delicate. You can hurt them. And so you can't have thousands of people marching through. And so what the French have done is recreated 3 caves in Lascaux in the Dordogne, Chauvet north of Avignon, and Cosquer in Marseille. And they are just these perfect reproductions of prehistoric cave paintings. And to go through each one is just stepping back in time. And you know, the French do a lot of things well, and this is one of the things they do really, really well, because they're just they're beautiful, they're realistic. You're walking through them, and each one is fantastic. I would recommend any of them if you're in any of those areas.
Yeah,
you went to Lascaux, right?
I went to Lascaux with my family, and it was truly a life-changing experience. It was just so moving. The story, the idea of the generations of family working on the same drawings, you know, adding a little more to each drawing, and you know, how they painted them into the wall, you know, understanding the curvature of the wall and how light or oil lamps would or candles would light them was really fascinating, and the movement of the light and how that would make the animals look like they were moving. It's like, talk about early cinematography. It was just incredible. So that was probably that was a life-changing experience, I think, for all of us. I had my older son and my husband were behind us, and we were in a very small group. And what's interesting about going to Lascaux, at least in my experience, is it wasn't crowded at all. They take you in small groups. There weren't tons of people there. It really felt like an intimate and unusual experience. And my younger son and I were in front, we were holding hands, and we were just at the end, both of us, I think we had tears in our eyes. We were just couldn't believe what we were experiencing. And the way that they tell the story, the tour guide is so intimate, so sort of visual, that they do an amazing job, really. And it's, you know,
is it only in French, or is it in English as well?
Both. You can get different tours.
German.
There are more French tours. Yeah.
English. I'm trying to remember. I guess we must have done it in English. But I don't.
Depends on the one. So Chauvet, for example, is mostly French, some English. Cosquer, you actually go through with headphones, which they've got 8 different languages. So each one is different, but they all accommodate English, no problem. Yeah, but you feel like you're in a cave. They're not Disney-ish reproductions where oh, I'm on the Matterhorn.
You really feel like
you are in the cave.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
Have any of you ever been to the Fond? We have a question here. The Fond de Gaume.
Yeah.
Do you know that place? Where is it?
Yeah, it's in the Dordogne area also. It's one of the few 30,000-year-old caves you can actually go into. You can see the real one. Just because you can't go many people, and it has different ventilation, so you don't have the same problem with carbon dioxide and moisture buildup. But it's the rare one. that you can see that's real.
Huh. And what's it like inside?
It's more spread out. It's a little darker. It's not as spectacular as the one you've seen or the other two,
Right.
but it's still impressive to see things that were, I mean, some of these paintings were done back when Homo sapiens and Neanderthal were duking it out for control of Europe. You know, this is Neanderthal were still running around when this happened. I mean, the Chauvet cave, it's like a big cavern, and you know, you get stalagmites and stalagmites and a semicircle of bear skulls on the ground, because that's what's in the real cave. Because I don't know what that means, but there were bears too.
Huh. That's neat.
Yeah, very real.
Karen, is there anything you'd like to throw in about visiting or places that we might not have covered?
This was not on the agenda, but speaking of, just hearing you talk about the caves, I'm always surprised by how ancient France is and how, ancient, I guess is the word. And if you're ever in Bordeaux, which is still in the south, but it's towards the Atlantic side, there's a phenomenal museum of the Nouvelle Aquitaine. And like the first part of the museum literally is, as you said, like Homo sapiens and who were the other guys they were duking out? But it was like Neanderthals, like little stone tools. You go through rooms and rooms, and finally they figured out how to use tools to make tools, and then sort of civilization explodes. But it's a fabulous museum in Bordeaux, and Bordeaux is a whole other place that's one of my favorite cities here. And I go a lot actually, but that museum, it kind of really encapsulates, it's a whole huge experience, but how much sort of prehistory is in this area is just mind-blowing.
Also, to that point, to Karen, I'm sorry, just to jump in quickly to Karen's point, the Musée Carnavalet is the Museum of Paris, the city of Paris, and they're coming up is going to be a special exhibit on the revolution, but the basement, right, is all prehistoric stuff found in Paris. So if you go from the top, you start at the revolution, and as you go down the museum, you go to the basement, you end up in literally prehistoric
It's
Paris.
Phenomenal. Yeah, that's my favorite museum in Paris, actually.
And
there are also, of course, the catacombs, right, in Paris.
Right.
If you want to see a lot of skulls.
Right, exactly. Human skulls.
One does sometimes.
They have meetups there. They have like foodie and different kinds of meetups people do down there.
I think Karen, Philip, Keith, Kat, we only have another minute here. Is there any one last thing that you'd like to wisdom you'd like to impart? I feel like we should have booked 3 hours. There's so much for us to talk about. But what I'm hoping is that if there's anything you've mentioned here that isn't already on the Google Doc that we all shared, that I can sort of repurpose tomorrow for our viewers, that you'll go in there and put anything in there, any other little thought that has occurred to you, and I'll try to share it, make some sense of it tonight or tomorrow morning and share it with everybody. But is there one last thing one little nugget, Kat? Karen?
Well, I had a few more things that I put in the Google Doc that are just some recommendations for Provence.
Like
one
what?
of them is if you're in Cannes, I'd highly recommend going to the Vertigo Bar at the Radisson Blu, which has a 360-degree view of the water. It's really, really incredible. And also, if you're looking to go out for nightlife, Rue Hoche is a little bit farther removed from the touristy section and is a little more trendy. So that's a fun place to go.
I think too, people do think that you have to fly into Paris, but you really don't have to fly into Paris. And I think if people want to just try to adventure out a little bit, they can, routing to Nice, to Marseille, to Bordeaux, there are other places, to Lyon, you can fly
Lyon.
in.
We flew to Lyon, right.
Mm-hmm.
You can also fly to Barcelona and make your way It's
That
not that
is-
hard to cross into
That's
France
where,
with a rental
that is
car.
yeah, that's our international airport. We rarely fly out of Paris because it's.
Yeah,
it's
I remember that about you.
Yeah.
And you can go then, to seaside towns there and then up into Bordeaux and then come back and sort of do the whole western side of France and never, and far from the madding crowd. And what my last suggestion is that in every town, go to the little road stop sort of, when you're driving on local streets, sort of cafe or little grocery store, and get the local tome cheese. They're all different. Some of them will taste like honey and some like nuts and some like,
So true.
yeah. And it's just, I wrote a Le Weekend, if you go to my Le Weekend page about, a tome by any other name, there are, thousands of tomes all across France. And if you ask, oh, where did this cheese come from? They'll say, oh, it's the guy up the road makes that and brings it down, twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I have no idea, what he puts in it, but it'll be taste like cinnamon or something. It's really pretty incredible.
The advice I give to visitors to France, to Provence specifically, but to France in general, is to slow down.
Yeah.
That some of the best moments are when you're having that second glass of wine at a cafe and chatting with a server, or you're wandering the little crooked back streets. It's easy on a trip to say, well, I have to see the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and the this and the that and rush around, and then you need a vacation from your vacation. But France really rewards taking your time and not overscheduling and just soaking in the ambiance.
I agree.
Really
going slowly, taking time to see things, stopping at street fairs or little markets. Try to remember how you saw things as a child. What was great for me going with my children is I got to see it through their eyes, but that every little thing gets inspected, right, by children. They're always sort of looking at all this stuff, and make it that way, just where you go slowly, you eat ice cream for breakfast, and you have fun.
I would say to that point, my advice would be is to go the opposite way where all the crowds are going. If you see, if you see a little alley, if you see an alleyway, a doorway, an opening, look kind of cool, go there, follow it, because sometimes that's where you make the coolest discoveries.
Cool. Well, it's great to do this, and I hope we do it again. I think this was a great start to a fun kind of thing. And viewers, if you're here and you are you're signed up for my newsletter, you probably write to me sometimes anyway. I love hearing from you all, but tell me if this worked for you, what you enjoyed about it. And also, Dan has put up the Alliance Française de Pasadena link, and also Frenchly.us. And, if you sign up for my Le Weekend every Friday, we will get to communicate that way. I try to respond to everybody. But this is a great crew, and I think we'd all probably love to have more of these fun conversations. So if it works for you and you would enjoyed it, please tell us about it.
Absolutely. And Caitlin and crew, all of you, Kat, Philip, Keith, Karen, and your ultimate boss, Emmanuel, thank you so much for doing this and partnering with Alliance Française de Pasadena. It was most enjoyable. I learned an awful lot, and I was also happy to hear that I hit on a few of the items, not knowing that they were off the beaten path, and reminiscing to myself about how enjoyable those moments were. And it's a real motivation to indeed slow down, not just there but here, and be somewhat of a tourist in your own hometown, and then don't put it off. Schedule the trip back to France as your schedule allows. Get it penciled into your schedule, and don't put off the travel.
And if you come to the Frenchly homepage right now, actually, we're also raffling off 2 tickets to Paris for next spring. So you could win those. You can enter to win. And also, I will be sending out my Le Weekend tomorrow, the link to this conversation on YouTube. And I will be putting together a document with some of these ideas, which are hard to sort of assimilate from the notes and the conversation and everything else. But I'll put it together so there are some ideas in a format that you can look at things and plan things and start to ask questions. And we'll do this again. Thank you
Sounds-
so much,
sounds
Karen,
good.
Philip,
Thank you.
Pat.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
thank
much,
very
Dan, for
It
the
was fun.
idea. Take care, everybody.
Au
Have a
revoir.
great night. Au
Au
revoir.
revoir.
Ciao.
Bonsoir.
Bye-bye.